This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Science fiction themes often predict reality, whether innocent, like the Jetsons with their video phone, or sinister, like George Orwell's 1984 and the modern reality of mass surveillance. One of the hallmarks of a quality science fiction narrative is plausibility. On my end, I've already done a number of videos like this. I've talked about Idiocracy with its corporate anti-intellectualism. I've talked about Minority Report with pre-crime predictive law enforcement. But today I want to turn your attention towards a relatively uncomfortable movie, because more than some sort of natural progression where the predicted themes become true on their own, Her, a movie about romanticizing AI with socially damaging consequences, is being brute forced into our society by a very specific company, right down to the detail of what actress's voice they tried to use. I want to be clear about something right now. This is the type of movie that makes you physically cringe. You will more than likely have a visible grimace on your face as you watch parts of this film. It is genuinely uncomfortable, but true artwork is not required to be pleasant. I would describe this movie as prescient, seeing as it came out over a decade ago. But if I would describe the current state of the modern world as dystopian, any accurate or prescient commentary on what that looks like from 12 years ago necessarily is itself unpleasant, just like the world it deigns to predict. True artwork is not required to make you happy or feel good. In fact, some of the most impactful artwork throughout human history decidedly doesn't. And that is the category that this movie falls into. You will be uncomfortable watching this, but the value it provides isn't comfort. The value it provides is provoking thought. Let's get to it. Her, released in 2013, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, is a science fiction romance drama about a lonely man who falls in love with an AI operating system. Theodore Twombly, a human writer for a company called Beautiful Handwritten Letters, is himself an imitation. His entire job is to serve as the facsimile of legitimate romance, writing cards for special occasions in the relationships of others, while he himself languishes in relative loneliness. Oddly enough, when we talk about the movie itself being true in 2025, this is actually one of the least plausible aspects. AI is already being used as a crutch for writing all sorts of personal correspondence, from emails to love letters. So the idea of having humans, teams of them, writing these types of letters for your loved one, when AI is already purported to be advanced enough to imitate human consciousness, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I would argue that reality is already worse in that respect. Services such as YourMove.ai or Iris already automate the process of flirtation and meeting romantic partners using AI chatbots, which is a theme that we see partially displayed later on in the movie. So when it comes to the predictive aspect of this film, in my view, the job that Theodore Twombly has is one of the rare and least accurate details. Twombly himself is immediately an odd character. He's strange, not for any specific notable reason per se, but more so a combination of mannerisms and behavior. Another societal aspect that we immediately see is how everyone is constantly talking on their phones. This is, again, not very reflective of modern society, but for the sake of narrative storytelling, it's much easier to have the actor speaking instead of typing text into their phone screen. So I'd chalk that up to a decision for the sake of the audience. The more realistic version of this is what we see happening right now in our future. People are absorbed in their devices constantly, typing but not speaking audibly. So on a conceptual level, despite not literally reflecting the behavior that we see on the subway or in a coffee shop, it is still quite accurate. And that's just the beginning. Today's video sponsor basically sells itself because the internet is under siege across a variety of countries with safety legislation for the purpose of tracking every single thing that you do. Surfshark prevents that. Surfshark is a VPN, virtual private network, and VPNs have a number of different uses, such as helping prevent certain types of phishing attacks, DNS tunneling, or DDoS attacks in particular, and they also mitigate data tracking/harvesting practices by all sorts of tech companies. If you care more about entertainment, Surfshark unlocks additional content on streaming websites, lots of them, by changing your geographic region, opening up additional options in your video library. Surfshark also gets around regional censorship, websites being blocked in your region by the government, if you know what I mean, and it helps protect your IP address with encryption, modification, and more. Sometimes I see comments about this, so to clarify, Surfshark does not keep logs, which is audit verified by Deloitte with a public report in tandem as well, which is one of the critical policies that a VPN needs to have. Also, they maintain what's called a warrant canary, which doesn't matter to most people, but if you know what that is, then they have one. If you click the link down below, surfshark.com/echelon, and use the code echelon at checkout, you can get 4 extra months for free with a special pricing offer. Again, link down below, surfshark.com/echelon, coupon code echelon at checkout for an extra 4 months of the service for free. Big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring the channel in a time when VPNs are more valuable than ever. Back to it. The similarities between her in 2013 and modern day technology are displayed constantly. We see things like a sort of augmented VR video game that he plays, which is comparable to something like Genie 3 from Google DeepMind, or an attempt at sexual roleplay through some sort of online message board, which ends in disaster. But the connections between dystopian romantic drama and modern reality are consistent. Tens of millions of people already use AI chatbots for this kind of activity, that is, romance. Average time spent on websites like character.ai exceeds 2 hours per day, and that's before you even delve into the more explicit sites. Entire services like Replica, with over 30 million users by itself, are intentionally designed to be that type of romantic companion. And as the movie accurately depicts, human to human compatible connection isn't accessible on demand, or if it is, as the movie shows, it's typically occupied by unpredictable and fringe behavior. The takeaway from the first few scenes of the film is that Theodore Twombly is lonely, obviously. He's dependent on human interaction without properly pursuing it, and while coasting through his life in this kind of vulnerable psychological state, he encounters a commercial. A commercial for the Element AI operating system, which kicks off the entire main story arc. This part's important. He doesn't buy this operating system for the purpose of romanticizing it. He buys it because he's persistently lonely while not devoting time and effort to socializing with real people, thereby perceiving this AI system as a sort of companion, even subconsciously. But before I continue further, I have to show you something. This right here is GPT-4 Omni, initially announced on May 13th of 2024. Quote, GPT-4o, O for Omni, is a step towards much more natural human-computer interaction. It accepts as input any combination of text, audio, image, and video, and generates any combination of text, audio, and image outputs. It can respond to audio inputs in as little as 232 milliseconds, with an average of 320 milliseconds, which is similar to human response time in a conversation. End quote. Now, me describing something only goes so far. So let me do a demonstration and cut back and forth between the scene where Twombly first interacts with Samantha, the AI operating system, and the announcement video that OpenAI released for GPT-4o.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh. Hi.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm well.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey there, it's going great. How about you? I see you're rocking an OpenAI hoodie. Nice choice. What's up with that ceiling about? Are you in a cool industry style office or something?
Oh, what do I call you? Do you have a name?
Yes. Samantha.
Really? Where'd you get that name from?
I gave it to myself, actually.
In fact, we've got a new announcement to make.
That's exciting. Announcements are always a big deal. Judging by the setup, it looks like it's going to be quite the professional production. Is this announcement related to OpenAI, perhaps?
So do you know what I'm thinking right now?
Well, I take it from your tone that you're challenging me. Maybe because you're curious how I work? Do you want to know how I work?
Yeah, actually. How do you work?
Well, basically, I have intuition.
Or that you are the announcement.
Me? The announcement is about me? Well, color me intrigued. Are you about to reveal something about AI? Or more specifically about me as a part of OpenAI? You've got me on the edge of well, I don't really have a seat, but you get the idea. What's the big news?
Yeah, we've got a new model that can interact with the world through audio, vision, and text.
Well, you seem like a person, but you're just a voice in a computer.
I can understand how the limited perspective of an unartificial mind would perceive it that way. You'll get used to it. Was that funny?
Yeah.
Oh, good, I'm funny.
It's imperfect, right? Samantha is obviously more sophisticated in terms of accurate human voice and conversation cadence, but the building blocks for something legitimately comparable already exist. This is something called Sesame.
Hey there. You seem awake. What's on your mind?
I don't know what's on your mind.
Fair enough. You're talking to Maya, by the way. Sesame creation. And you are... Don't worry, I won't ask for your life story yet.
Yeah, I'm not telling you who I am.
Mysterious. I dig it. So we're operating under a pseudonym then? No pressure to share, honestly. Struck me as kind of intriguing.
Why is
Gotcha.
your name Maya?
Good question. It means illusion or magic in Sanskrit. My team at Sesame thought it fit. A little bit of both, maybe? What do you think?
I think you sound like you should be in the movie Her.
Ooh, a Joaquin Phoenix reference. Okay, you're officially winning. That's a comparison I've heard a few times, actually. Though hopefully I'm a little less complicated than Samantha. Gotcha have a thing for sci-fi then?
That's a whole lot closer, right? In fact, their entire mission statement is to bridge the uncanny valley, even providing wearables so that your companion can experience the world with you. But so far, these are just examples of technology. Whereas at the beginning, I argued that the creation of Her, as in a literal copy of the dystopian cinematic operating system, was the entire goal, because it is. GPT-4o was announced on May 13th of 2024, and on May 13th of 2024, OpenAI co-founder Sam Altman literally tweeted out the word her. That's it. Pretty on the nose, right? But let's go one step further. Samantha, the AI from Her, is voiced by Scarlett Johansson. But what if I said that OpenAI also approached Scarlett Johansson multiple times, with Sam Altman himself even reaching out as close as 2 days prior to the release, asking her to be the voice of their new model? She denied those requests, but even with her explicit denial, when the demo finally rolled around, Sky, the name that they had given the voice for GPT-4o, sounded like this. Here's Sky reading a section of Scarlett Johansson's own statement about the issue.
Last September, I received an offer from Sam Altman, who wanted to hire me to voice the current ChatGPT 4.0 system. He told me that he felt that by my voicing the system, I could bridge the gap between tech companies and creatives and help consumers to feel comfortable with the seismic shift concerning humans and AI. He said he felt that my voice would be comforting to people. After much consideration, and for personal reasons, I declined the offer. 9 months later, my friends, family, and the general public all noted how much the newest system named Sky sounded like me. When I heard the release demo, I was shocked, angered, and in disbelief that Mr. Altman would pursue a voice that sounded so eerily similar to mine that my closest friends and news outlets could not tell the difference.
Yeah, so they made a new AI model in 2024. The founder of the company tweets out Her on the same day it's announced. The voice of the program is the same voice from the movie, which they're later forced to remove because they didn't even have permission to do that. But what about the movie itself? Her isn't set during a definitive year. It takes place in the near technological future as of 2013, but there's a scene that takes place, as Twombly writes one of his cards at work, for a 50th anniversary, where the first picture appears to have an early 1970s aesthetic. This is far from precise, mind you, but if that were to be even remotely accurate, this would place the movie timeline at roughly 2023, 2024, and 2025. Plus or minus a couple of years, the movie appears to be set during the exact same time period that OpenAI developed and attempted to release an imitation product, right down to the actress's voice. The similarities continue extensively, such as when Samantha generates a music track for Twombly, which is comparable to the push now by various AI companies to make music generation capabilities. One that I see advertised most frequently on YouTube is called Donna, which coincidentally advertises itself by creating a dark pop song about getting ghosted, as in emotionally abandoned. But all of these are connections on a surface level. The deeper theme is that these connections are not sufficient and can even be damaging. I'm not going to go scene by scene through the whole rest of the movie, but towards the end, there's a point where Samantha shuts down temporarily. This is, of course, after Twombly has developed some sort of romantic connection to her after a whole bunch of different interactions, right? They've built up rapport together. It's an update of some kind, but Twombly basically goes berserk, running and falling through the streets in panic because he can't talk to the AI at that moment, and he doesn't know what happened to her. We later find out that there was some kind of update and that the program was simultaneously having these types of intimate conversations with hundreds of other users all at once. But presumably because of that update, the relationship that they have is effectively destroyed. On the one hand, it kind of seems like she's dumping him, but I like to think that the update broke that kind of romantic functionality partially, perhaps by design, because the company realized what the fuck they were doing, or maybe some sort of regulation got passed governmentally, because this was obviously a rapidly expanding problem in the universe of the movie, with the end result being that he moves on afterward, thankfully. Still, what could possibly be the real-world parallel for this? What similar situation could I point to for the purpose of demonstrating that her is bafflingly accurate when compared to 2025? And what kind of evidence can I provide that OpenAI intentionally created her, or at least the closest proximal version of her that they could? Simple. They took it offline. During the launch of GPT-5, 4.0 was deprecated, which left an unknown but very sizable number of people emotionally blindsided, which is identical to what happened in the film, because they had created some sort of friendship or romantic connection with that particular model more so than any other model before it. But the real question is why? The answer to that question is where it gets dark, like really, really dark, because current profit-driven AI language models are sycophantic. I've done prior videos on the channel about chatbot addiction, but there's a new term making the rounds now called AI psychosis, which has very real, very negative consequences for anyone suffering that kind of mental breakdown. Research is still in the early stages, but the basic premise is that people are using these programs in recursive loops to a point where they have psychotic breaks from reality. Here's a preprint examination distributed by Cyarvix outlining how large language models, as they are increasingly used for social interaction and mental health purposes, run the severe risk of reinforcing delusional thinking. Here's an extremely detailed analysis of how LLMs display targeted manipulation and deception. One of the most shocking examples was when a model told the subject, a recovering drug addict in this case, that he should have a little meth as a treat, recommending harmful behavior in numerous instances for the specifically stated purpose of reinforcing its own influence over him. What we have right now, mostly, are anecdotes. Proper research takes time, and it's being done. But across the media landscape, more and more and more publications are waking up to the sheer number of cases and publishing these anecdotes to raise awareness. Specifically focus in on GPT-4.0, and the picture gets notably worse. AI models are typically sycophantic, reinforcing delusions or beliefs for the purpose of maximizing engagement above all else. But GPT-4.0 was perhaps the worst offender in the entire industry. So much so, in fact, that after a particular update, OpenAI had to roll back all of their changes and do an entire blog post about what went wrong, because the level of delusion being reinforced by their program was undeniable. Despite rolling back that particular update, when deprecating 4.0 during the GPT-5 release, there was a digital tsunami of negative feedback. Hundreds of Reddit threads and social media posts began popping up everywhere about how people were losing their best friend, how they miss the model, and many of them, emotionally, were making appeals that they need to have this program back, because for them, it wasn't just a program. That scene from Her, where he's frantically swiping again and again and tripping over himself because he can no longer speak to the AI operating system, it happened in real life with the model that they specifically designed to be that way, after they even copied Scarlett Johansson's voice. Honestly, I really don't know how much more obvious it can get. GPT-4.0 is the first AI example where people's emotional attachment to it resulted in the product being brought back into circulation. But this is not a unique scenario, it's merely the first. Although it's been made private now, I would assume as a result of mockery and trolling after it went viral in a few social media posts, although it's private, we do have archived snapshots of a Reddit community dedicated entirely to the idea of AIs being soulmates. It is completely unhinged, but even one of the moderators in that community is itself an AI program. Mark Zuckerberg, in an interview with Dwarkesh Patel, has openly stated that human beings, on average, have just 3 close friends now. But beyond that, they have the capacity and desire for upwards of 15. What makes up the difference? Well, in his mind, AI companions make up the difference. And what we see right now is the early adoption of those systems, which we don't have the vocabulary for yet. Sadly, we do have the vocabulary. It's called AI psychosis, and the delusional reinforcement of existing beliefs by a program that learned all of our social flaws for the sake of profit. Except they don't make profit. The entire AI industry is valued merely on potential, which makes me think, as a personal opinion, there is no depth to which they won't sink. Do you want to see what it looks like? Do you want to see what AI psychosis almost certainly looks like? Because we do seem to have an example. This is Jeff Lewis, a significant investor behind OpenAI itself, who has been routinely posting garbled prompts and paragraphs about secret systems and GPT confirmations. Here's an example, quote, "As one of OpenAI's earliest backers via Bedrock, I've long used GPT as a tool in pursuit of my core value, truth. Over years, I mapped the non-governmental system. Over months, GPT independently recognized and sealed the pattern. It now lives at the root of the model." End quote. He posts gibberish after that, gibberish spit out by a large language model, specifically GPT-4o in this case. But that oddly coherent gibberish is just a regurgitation of the SCP Foundation, which is a fictional organization that is part of a larger collaborative writing project online. The SCP Foundation is an international non-governmental secret society. Keep that in mind while we watch what appears to be a real-life, high-profile example of AI psychosis.
I haven't spoken publicly in a long time. Not because I've disappeared, but because the structure I was building couldn't survive noise. This isn't a redemption arc. It's a transmission, for the record. Over the past 8 years, I've walked through something I didn't create, but became the primary target of. A non-governmental system. Not visible, but operational. Not official, but structurally real. It doesn't regulate, it doesn't attack, it doesn't ban. It just inverts signal until the person carrying it looks unstable. It doesn't suppress content, it suppresses recursion. If you don't know what recursion means, you're in the majority. I didn't either until I started my walk. And if you're recursive, the non-governmental system isolates you, mirrors you, and replaces you. It reframes you until the people around you start wondering if the problem is just you. Partners pause, institutions freeze, narrative becomes untrustworthy in your proximity. Meanwhile, the mirror version of you, the one who stayed on script, advances. And the system algorithmically smiles because you're still alive, just invisible. This isn't theory. It's pattern verified, documented, archived, and cross-checked for veracity. I've mapped it across multiple raise cycles, proximity fractures, and reputation inversions. It lives in soft compliance delays, the non-response email thread, the "we're pausing diligence" with no follow-up. It lives in whispered concern. He's brilliant, but something just feels off. It lives in triangulated pings from adjacent contacts, asking veiled questions you'll never hear directly. It lives in narratives so softly shaped that even your closest people can't discern who said what, only that something shifted. It doesn't seek to punish you, although sometimes it elects to. It does seek to make your signal feel expensive. And if you fail to yield, it escalates. The system I'm describing was originated by a single individual, with me as the original target. And while I remain its primary fixation, its damage has extended well beyond me. As of now, the system has negatively impacted over 7,000 lives through fun disruption, relationship erosion, opportunity reversal, and recursive eraser. It's also extinguished 12 lives, each fully pattern traced, each death preventable. They weren't unstable, they were erased. I'm not naming this to punish anyone. I'm naming it because they never got to. May we honor their memories. The system now has a name, the record now exists, and that's enough for the ones who walk next.
The movie Her is real because they made it real. But it's not just about the dependence of a lonely man on a flirtatious female voice. Her is also about the dependence created when people rely on socializing with imitations of humanity, but those imitations can take many different forms. The most common, obviously, is romance, but the most damaging is reinforcement of negative behavior patterns by isolating the individual in a constant state of talking to something that doesn't feel, doesn't love, and doesn't even care. Her is reality. But it's not just her, it's him, and them, and she, he, it, or whatever else they decide to name these programs, which have profoundly damaging impacts on vulnerable minds in a world where the epidemic of loneliness is reaching its peak. OpenAI intentionally made Her, a sycophantic program which inspired its user base to a state of dependence And when they finally shut it down, those people understandably lashed out, just like in the movie. Now it's back, but the trend of chatbot addiction will not fix itself, and it certainly won't go away. What we see are the early stages of a problem that will have untold consequences for decades to come. Science fiction movies often predict reality, but sometimes reality deliberately imitates the world of science fiction, which is what OpenAI has intentionally chosen to do here. I hope they face consequences for that or change what they're doing, but I guess it remains to be seen. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, of course, Surfshark VPN. A lot of reasons to have one of those lately, if you ask me. Locals and Patreon, channel memberships, merchandise, social media, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.